Hello everybody and welcome back to the Fortress of Solitude. Today we're going to be checking out Justice League Unlimited issue 8 by Mark Waid, Dan Mora and Tamara Bonvillain. Yesterday comes to an explosive close this issue as the Omega Energy infused Gorilla Grodd, or should I say Gorilla God, leads the Legion of Doom against Time and Universe displaced Justice League members. Grodd intends on using the Legion to kill off the heroes, then in turn he'll kill off the villains and assume his role as ruler of all things. Pretty run-of-the-mill kind of classic villain trope. Something which I like Waid has set up as like a very much thing that he is aware of. Like he knows Grodd has all of this power and, you know, could do all of this stuff, make a new universe, erase things, change things, edit things, but he's not doing any of that. He just wants to rule over people and everything. Like his mission started with him wanting to rule over mankind and make apekind the dominant species. He's a very small fish playing in a very large pond, and he doesn't even know it or refuses to actually acknowledge that. As the heroes and villains battle destroys much of the Watchtower, Airwave rushes to Red Tornado, wanting the heroes' help, but the hero still believes Airwave to be a villain, having helped Grodd and betrayed the League. Airwave is still trying to prove that he is a hero, telling Tornado that he grabbed what heroes he could from throughout time and space to help out, since the actual League members are anchored to the places where Grodd sent them and he can't grab them. Again, I find it really weird that like we never got any tie-ins with this series, because as I said in my last review, the League being spread throughout time, that's like ripe for tie-ins. You know, you've got your Green Arrow in the Wild West, or Batman and Superman, thrown back into the dawn of time, stuff like that. That's like ripe tie-in territory, even if it was just one or two, and I'm really shocked we never actually got any of them. I don't know what the reason was behind that, whether they just didn't have enough time, or they're saving all of that for a little later on in the big summer event that's coming up. It's just very strange that you'd set all of this up as something that like, oh, we can go off into tie-ins here, but then you don't do that. And in a way, that's kind of refreshing that we didn't get, 50 billion tie-ins. Tornado, however, is malfunctioning thanks to the damage Grodd has done to him, and he tells the young hero to siphon off the little power he has keeping him and the station online, as the entire Watchtower has been corrupted and needs to be taken down first. The makeshift League, meanwhile, end up fighting pretty well together, despite many of them coming from very early on in their careers or at very low points, such as Aquaman, who is fresh from losing his own son and hand to Black Manta. I did get a little excited that Waid got the 90s Aquaman here, fighting Black Manta, which just feels like an age since we've had Aquaman fighting Black Manta. They haven't done that in quite a while. Even in his ongoing at the moment, Aquaman has not fought Black Manta yet. So I like that we actually got like an ever so brief battle with them. Aquaman is saved from impalement by a young Barry Allen, fresh from getting his powers and for fighting the Turtle for the first time, something which is chronicled back in Joshua Williamson's Flash Year 1 story. The heroes begin turning the tide, and Pythoness begins to notice that it's the work of Airwave, having thought the kid was killed by Grodd. Grodd knows that this is nothing, it's not going to stop his plans, but he can't help but acknowledge the unexpected surprises the heroes seem to always have up their sleeves. A real win for this series has been the diverse teams Waid has been throwing at us. Like, no Justice League in each of the books is the same one we've been reading. It's all been different teams for all the different situations they've been dealing with, and this one that Airwave has brought together is probably the most wildest and like diverse. Like, we've got Jonah Hex, Arbin Sur's Green Lantern, a Year 1 Batman from the Scott Snyder New 52 run, 90s Aquaman, all these different, really different characters from different eras all coming together, and it's the most change the League has had in a while, and a lot less structured than the team has been used to up until this point. But all these are wild cards, and that's throwing a wrench into Grodd's plans, since he didn't really account for any of them turning up. Grodd attacks, firing his Omega beams at Robin, who suddenly disappears from reality, dodging the beam. As he leaves, more heroes begin to turn up, like Boy Thunder, Donna Troy, and the Terrifics, who turn up in Robin's place, further adding to the chaos. Pythoness gets a great moment here where she is attacked by Metamorpho and Bizarro, who's kind of just been stumbling around this entire like set piece, just going from one fight to the next, and he's not really been a big help or anything. He's just kind of there to add a bit of like weirdness and like a muscle when Grodd needs it, but he stumbles into Pythoness's spell that is fired at Metamorpho, and it ends up with this fantastic body horror shot where his body and Metamorpho's body meld together into this gross creature that writhes around on the ground. It's really damn cool, and it never is brought back back up, which I kind of feel like it probably should be, because these two characters are now kind of like molded together. So how the hell are they going to get out of, you know, one another's DNA, since they seem to be fused at a subatomic level there? Just really fun, like cartoony stuff that you aren't really meant to like think about. Like that's not going to have like some large implication or anything. And that's the one thing I've really liked about Mark Waid's book, is that it feels like an episode of the Justice League cartoon series. Like you can just kind of pick up an issue, witness some really cool action, and you don't have to follow along with the larger story if you don't want to, but you can want to. Grodd soon tires of the games the heroes are playing, unleashing a wave of Omega energy directed at the heroes, which begin to seemingly wipe them from reality as the Watchtower is ripped apart, turned into a giant Omega symbol. Grodd's plan is immediately put on hold as Airwave, having used the little bit of power Tornado gave him, managed to unanchor the Justice League, allowing them to finally return. Now this is the part of the book I didn't particularly like, just because we never actually got to see any of this happen. Like it's been set up that they're anchored and he needs to get them freed, and then they just appear here and they're freed. Again, this feels like it was meant to be a tie-in, like Airwave's travel around the multiverse or something to free these heroes, and you know the tie-ins would all culminate in like one book where they get freed and end up here. It just feels very kind of rushing towards the end a little bit here, where they've got all this stuff to wrap up in this issue. Which is really strange because this book does have an epilogue coming out next month. So I guess that's going to lead into more of the stuff that happens at the end of this issue, which we'll get to. But it just feels a little bit rushed that we kind of just got to get to that ending, bring the heroes back. The Justice League descend on Grodd, and there's a great pair of pages here where the entire League have been kind of set upon him, and they've all come together and they begin to use all of their different powers to restrain Grodd. Like we get Wonder Woman wrapping him in the lasso of truth, Plastic Man wraps his entire body around Grodd, you know, the Superman family use brute force to hold him in place, while Martian Manhunter dives into Grodd's head to disrupt the telepathy powers he stole from the hero. It's a great show of how these heroes all work well together, and how they just kind of know what their jobs are and just kind of get on with it, and know all their place in the team. Pythoness, seeing the tide is turning in the hero's favor, decides it's time to leave, casting an invisibility spell on herself and disappearing. Waid absolutely has something in store for her since she's being kept alive in the present day, and I'd like to know a little bit more about how she actually died, since it was hinted at that it's something that wasn't meant to happen and something that people forgot. So there is a mystery there, and I imagine we're going to see a little bit more about what that mystery is a little later on down the line. Joker also tries to escape, but runs into Batman Beyond and some of the other Bat family members, who sock him in the jaw and knock the clown out. As the heroes continue to beat back the villains, Airwave finds that Grodd and him are still linked via the Omega energy, meaning that he is also bleeding the energy everywhere he goes, just like Grodd. The heroes containing Grodd, meanwhile, help Manhunter and the Atoms get real close to him with their Atom Project device, which will give Manhunter his powers back, stripping them from Grodd and giving over his control to the Omega energy. There is an unintentionally funny bit here where the Atoms device is kind of shoved on Grodd's head, and he begins screaming about how he's darkness and death and everything. And I can't help but think of him like, if you're in the situation there with him, he's saying all this, but no one can hear what he's saying because A, it's really loud and there's a battle going on, but also he's got this thing on his head which is muffling his voice and what he is saying. So it's just such a funny visual of this screaming gorilla like flailing his arms around, screaming about being death and darkness, but no one can hear him because he's got this thing on his head. The device activates and Manhunter's powers return to him, leaving Grodd vulnerable. Before any of the heroes can react though, Airwave, overcome with the Omega energy, delivers one final punch to the gorilla, resulting in a huge explosion. This is the big sacrifice I knew Airwave would eventually make, probably leading to his death for good this time. I'm fairly certain he's going to have been dead, or something's going to happen that's going to keep him away for quite a while now. It was signposted pretty heavily right from the get-go, especially when he broke free from Grodd's control, and I think it happened in the best way possible. He gets one final punch at Grodd, kind of like gets one over on the guy that abused him and ruined his life. In the aftermath, the heroes regroup and find Grodd is now imprisoned by Green Lantern. Flash gets kind of a cool moment, kind of a meta moment as well, where he's been saying what I've been saying about Grodd, where he's this villain who overstepped his very limited reach and can't seem to understand that he was a little fish in a big pond, something Grodd is not happy about since he tries to eat Flash when he gets real close. While Grodd is held captive, the heroes have to deal with the Omega energy, which after interacting with Grodd is now amplified somehow and is growing out of control, with the Green Lanterns barely able to contain it. Mr. Terrific meanwhile is saddened by everything that he has built in the Watchtower falling to ruin to the villains, and now Airwave has gone missing. Manhunter knows that the blast probably actually killed the boy, but Terrific refuses to acknowledge that since he knew the boy the most out of anyone else there, and he knew the Watchtower and the League were everything the boy had in life, and he should have been able to see that he was in trouble and paid more attention to him. I do like the conviction Michael has here, feeling responsible for setting Airwave up as the team, kind of giving him the shot on the Alpha team there for a minute. Makes me believe that Wade does actually have something in store for Airwave, and for Mr. Terrific. I guess he's going to go and look for him now. Since that's kind of where we leave Michael off here. He refuses to admit that maybe Airwave is dead, and he and a bunch of other people, including Black Lightning, go off to try and find him amongst the wreckage. However, I think that's probably a story that's going to be something that we catch up on a little later on down the line, as there's a lot more pressing matters at hand, especially beyond the Omega energy, which is revealed to be keeping the displaced heroes Airwave had gathered actually in the present timeline. They cannot return home thanks to the tachyons the energy is putting off. So until they deal with the Omega energy problem, all of these time-displaced heroes are stuck in the present. Now this is a big twist I kind of didn't see coming, because Wade has really done a good job of whenever he does these time-displaced stories, or a hero goes and visits a different timeline, at the end of those stories he always puts the toys back in the box where they belong. We saw that when they went to the Kingdom Come universe, and how at the start of the story we had time-displaced Batman and Superman in the World's Finest tie-ins, and they are back in the present now. He's done a pretty good job of that, but here he's kind of leaving that open, where it's like, no, these guys are actually staying here, which is really quite interesting, and I am wondering what the timeline implications of this are, because these aren't just everyday, this isn't just a Batman from a couple of years ago. They've got the year one Batman here. There's a Superman Blue, a younger Wonder Woman, a couple of Robins, all these different characters are here, and that's got to have some sort of implication, which I imagine will be explored in the upcoming Absolute event, since this is actually tying into that, since the final page of this issue actually ties into the ending of this week's Superman issue 27, as Time Trapper from that issue has escaped the Absolute Legion and fallen into Hypertime, where he meets the World Forger, the brother of Monitor and Anti-Monitor and son of Perpetua. Time Trapper reveals a crisis is coming, and that time in this universe is coming to a close. This made me even more excited for the upcoming Absolute crossover, as I just thought that was just going to be a crossover with the two universes. We get some of the characters from that one over in this one, and vice versa, all predicated on the fact that they've got to find Booster Gold. But this is the first time it's actually been mentioned that it's going to be a crisis event, which, if you're unfamiliar with DC, whenever they do a crisis event, it's a big thing. Things are changed forever almost in here. The universes are reset or changed in some big way, and I have to imagine that's going to be no different here with this crisis. This is also a crisis that was actually referenced all the way back at the end of Doomsday Clock, one that leads to Superman being revitalized and fighting alongside returning allies, which I believe is a reference to the Legion of Superheroes. The revitalized part is interesting as well, because we know in an upcoming Superman story, once Zod gets to Earth, Superman is actually going to lose an eye to fighting Zod. So I imagine the revitalization is him, getting the eye back and probably getting, becoming Superman again, more or less. He becomes whole as Superman, and I'm really excited to find out what any of this means. This is such a cool little tease. I love that it's just one page hinting at something larger. We don't know the full extent of that yet. It hasn't been revealed, but stuff like this really makes me excited. I love the build up to a crisis. It's always very fun. Justice League Unlimited issue 8 rounded out a pretty fun little event from Mark Waid, one that actually ends up leading to something much bigger and has bigger consequences than I thought, but I am all for it. As with every other issue of the book, I've really loved the diverse nature of the League teams he's been using, and how it's never the same team twice. It's always something different and wild, and here with a little bit of time travel fuckery, we get a little bit of a really wild team here. The book was a little bit rushed there towards the end, as I had to kind of get to that finish line before all these other events begin. so it did feel a little bit rushed there in the end, especially with Airwave and his role in this final issue with bringing the heroes back. And as I said, it feels like this book was like ripe for tie-in territory, but it never happened, though it probably could have benefited from maybe 1 or 2 tie-ins. Apart from that, I really enjoyed this book. It was just like a fun Saturday morning cartoon. It never felt overstuffed or bloated, especially with the myriad of heroes from across the issue, which there's hundreds of heroes sometimes clogging up the page, and it never felt like it was too much. I'm also all in, pun intended, on the upcoming crisis Wade is setting up here at the end of the book. I can't wait to see what his next story arc for the Justice League will be. I'm going to give this issue a 7 out of 10.